Okay, let's play some damn chess. Suck my slut. Wow, she smells like spit. Street whore. And now, a word from my sponsors.
Caught your unhappy ass the fuck back to goddamn China and caught that goddamn coronavirus back with you and infect the whole...
Give me a second.
Oh, goddamn Chinese military! Infect the whole goddamn China. Caught your unhappy ass the fuck back to goddamn China and caught that goddamn coronavirus back with you and infect the whole goddamn Chinese military, infect the whole goddamn Chinese scientists, infect all the goddamn members of the goddamn Chinese government, goddamn government, kill them all and let God sort them the fuck out. Just as long as China can never be a threat to the United States of America. Kill them all and let God sort them the fuck out. You slant-eyed slut from China!
Amen.
New China!
Come to the bottom.
Amen. Why won't this goddamn game fucking start? God damn it. God fucking damn it. What the goddamn holy fuck? I didn't pull your fucking string, you son of a bitch. Son of a bitch. God damn it. God fuck it. Now fuck up and take that goddamn pawn. God damn it. Now fuck up and take that goddamn... You stupid motherfucker. Stupid. The stupid machine. God damn it. Oh. Oh, digger! I lost so much. I discombobulated myself just to try to ear your fucking work. You suck my motherfucking dick, bitch. God damn it. God fucking damn it. Jesus fucking Christ. A fucking goddamn Christ. Yeah, fucking Christ. Jesus fucking goddamn Christ. I snotted the fuck out of that place. God damn it. God damn it. God damn it. God fucking damn it. God damn it. God damn it. God fucking damn it.
Testament, and they directly contradict what Jesus taught. The scholar Bart Ehrman frames the problem starkly. If Jesus is right that you could turn your life around and start following the commandments and then enter into the kingdom, then why did he have to die? According to Jesus' own teaching, no blood sacrifice was necessary.
Bullshit.
Repentance and righteous living were sufficient. But Paul's entire theology depends on Jesus having to die to atone for sins that God otherwise couldn't forgive. This contradiction sits at the heart of the New Testament, visible to anyone willing to take a closer look. Yet most Christians never noticed.
This is boring as fuck.
The year is 1860, and on a sweltering Charleston afternoon, a cotton merchant named William Henry stands on a dock, watching another massive
Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. My guest for today is Justin, Deconstruction Zone. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. As a follower of your channel already, it's exciting to actually get down and collaborate with you.
Wonderful. I didn't realize you followed my channel.
Yeah. I'm kind of new to the YouTube atheist space, but I've tried to, early on, I tried to follow as many people as I can because there's so much good content. And it's like, how could you miss out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. One of the things that I try to do right now is seek out content creators that are not white men. We have too many white men.
It's so sad because, like, I know for a fact there are some non-white men out there in the space. But right now, it's dominated by white dudes that look exactly like me. In fact, a lot of people confuse me for Dan McClellan, who looks so much alike, although he's not technically an atheist. But yeah, the amount of people out there, Planet Peterson, that just have my white guy look is pretty wild.
A lot of people have seen you recently. You've been kind of making the rounds. I saw you over on Seth Andrews' channel, and I saw you on Myth Vision. And so you've been telling your backstory, and so I think a number of the people have heard it. But there might be a few that have not. So why don't you briefly tell us your background and your story?
Yeah, for sure. So, I had like the born again experience, as you might call it. When I was 15, almost 16, it was actually at the Heaven's Gates Hell's Flames play, if you know that one. I had already been toying with the idea of like really committing my life as a Christian. But like, so basically I grew up Catholic, and so that was what I knew. We didn't go to church on the weekends. We just went to a Catholic school, and we went to church typically on like every Thursday. With the class, and so that was kind of what I knew, but everyone around me believed like this stuff was true. So while Catholics don't typically force it down your throat, and my parents didn't either, when you're surrounded in a small town USA where everybody just believes it, you just kind of take it for granted that it could possibly be false. So when I became a teenager, I really started to take it seriously. I was like, well, this seems like kind of important. Like if there's a God and he wrote a book for us, like we should read the book. We should be very serious and intentional about this kind of thing. And for me, that all kind of came to a head in my
Jesus
mid-teens.
goddamn.
And I dedicated my life to Christ outside of the Catholic Church because I was so repulsed by the history of the Catholic Church that even though I agree with a lot of their doctrines that Protestants don't agree with, like I was fully on board at one point with purgatory, seemed to make the most sense to me, and some other like specifically Catholic doctrines. But I could never bring myself to say like, oh, I was a Catholic because I'm like, yeah, because our leaders are like molesting children. So like that was just a non-starter for me. Mm-hmm. Even though I definitely knew that some of the Catholic doctrines I would have to justify to my friends that are not Catholic. Nevertheless, I was born again Christian in my mid-teens. By the time I was graduating high school, I was already considered going into ministry. It was very important to me. And I was lucky that I had people in my life that were able to kind of pour into my life and try to try to make it feel like I had a second family, which was really cool. Like I did not have any bad experiences in the church. I know a lot of people have. I was really lucky that I kind of fell into a church that was just full of nice, down-to-earth people that really kind of cared about me.
God damn it.
So it was really nice for me because I had a really cool church experience. Like nobody was forcing anything on me. I kind of came into it. I was able to explore it myself. And then I eventually went off to engineering school. But I knew when I was going to school, I was already going to do Bible college and seminary. That was already in the works. I talked to my dad when I graduated high school. I was like, hey, I've already got 2 years of engineering school done because I did 2 years in high school. I was like, I kind of want to finish engineering, but I also really want to go into ministry. And he's like, well, just finish your degree, and then you can go to do more schooling after that. He goes, it'll work out pretty well because, like, if ministry doesn't work out, you've got a real career. And so it turns out he was right. That was the right move. And so I went to engineering school and then Bible college and then seminary. By the time I got through Bible college, though, I kind of deconstructed quite a bit into, like, now I'm like this liberal Christian where it's like, you know, again, I was kind of find myself agreeing with the Catholics, or like, okay, the Bible's got some problem, but it's okay. We've got church tradition over here, we've got the Bible over here, and you know, none of it's actually perfect, but it's good enough for what we need it for.
Did you ever consider becoming a Catholic priest?
I did. So before I got into junior high, so I went to this really small Catholic school, and they had an association that was really close with one of the monasteries where we would bring in, we called them brothers, but basically they're monks. Where we would bring in like 1 or 2 monks like once a year, and they would tell us what life is like as, you know, living in the monastery doing monk stuff. And we would do the same thing with nuns. Nuns would come in and say, this is what it's like to be a nun. It was just kind of cool. And I remember at a young age, like in the 5th grade, thinking, wow, that'd be really awesome to like just like chill out with the dudes and like, you know, do like monk stuff, you know, making beers and reading manuscripts. Now that's not really what they do anymore, but that was like the classic monk idea. And so when I was a kid, as a young kid, I was like, I could do that as a living. That would be really cool. I would enjoy every minute of it. But what happened, and you can predict this, you already know what happened next. I got junior high puberty set in, and I was like, oh, I like girls, so I don't know about this monk business.
I get that.
Like real quick, I was like, nope, that's not happening. But I still, to this day, like kind of like the idea of getting to like chill out in a monastery and just do fun stuff like that. But that was one of the reasons why when I got involved in the Protestant church, I still was kind of drawn to the idea of ministry because you get to do some of that stuff kind of tangentially. You really get to read the Bible a lot and do your study. And that to me, that was always enjoyable. It's still enjoyable as an atheist. I love it.
That's cool. That's cool. So you went into seminary and you started studying the Bible, and what did that do to your faith?
That's good. So it's funny, like, I came into seminary like pretty liberal, and like, there's only one example I would give that might demonstrate what I mean by liberal. Like, I was in theology class, and we had this amazing professor, Joanne Watson. She was such a delight, but like, we were going through the section of our book that talked about the theology surrounding messianic prophecies and things like that. And she kind of briefly just kind of went through that section, was like, oh yeah, the prophecies,
God,
no big deal, moved
damn
on. And she, at one point she mentioned that Jesus fulfilled so many prophecies, and I looked at her, like with like the face, like, I know you didn't just say Jesus actually fulfilled these prophecies. And she's like, and she saw me looking at her, and she's like, well, I mean, technically they're typological. And then she had to do the whole spiel of like, well, he didn't really fulfill them. They're like foreshadowings and they're typologies. So that was the type of liberal I was when I got to seminary. I already knew that, like, listen, when we say Jesus fulfilled prophecies, what we really mean is that there was like these foreshadowings in the Old Testament. He didn't really fulfill anything. But like, even as a liberal Christian, that was something I was willing to accept at that time. But if you ask any mainline Christian, like, did Jesus fulfill the messianic prophecies? If you told them that you didn't believe that, they would say you're a heretic. They're like, well, you're a heretic if you believe in the Messiah.
Right.
Well,
Right.
So that's how liberal I already was when I got there. But by the time I left seminary, like, to me it was just too much. Like, I already covered too much. For example, one of the things that really bothered me was this whole sacrificial system. My first year at seminary, I was like, listen, I really have to wrap my head around the sacrificial system because it's such a silly system. And the Christian notion is that God put the sacrificial system in place to foreshadow Christ's sacrifice eventually in the future. But like, the more I was reading the comparative literature, because you have to do that in Bible college and seminary, I would say more in seminary than Bible college.
Mm-hmm.
The more I was reading like the Hittite literature and the Egyptian literature and the Mesopotamian literature, more I was like, it seems like everybody was already doing this. Like, God didn't do anything unique. Like, everybody was already sacrificing bulls. They were already doing sin rituals to rid themselves of sin. Like the scapegoat ritual, we already have that. The Hittites wrote about it. The Assyrians wrote about it. In fact, the Assyrians have a ritual for the scape sheep. It's not a scapegoat. Where you basically you place your hands on the head of the sheep and you put the sins on it, and then you cut the head off the sheep. One part of the sheep gets burned up, and another part of the sheep where the sins were placed gets sent out to the desert and dumped. There's another ritual where one part goes to the river and one part goes to the desert. And so, but these elaborate rituals to cleanse the people of their sins by transference that we find in the Hebrew Bible, they're ubiquitous in the ancient world. There's all kinds of these rituals. And same thing with sickness, like this idea that, well, this uncleanliness can lead to sickness. It leads to sickness and death, right? And therefore, purity becomes really important.
God damn it.
Again, the Jews didn't invent that. That was already present in all of the ancient sacrificial religious systems. So the more I was reading the comparative literature, the more I was like, nothing in the Hebrew Bible is unique at all. Like, they just happened to not die during the Bronze Age collapse in 1170, and so their religious system lived on. That's it. That's all that happened.
Interesting. Yeah, that's something I did not know until after I became an atheist and I started listening to other atheists.
So, anyways, it was a lot of stuff like that for me that was problematic, because once you realize that nothing in the Hebrew Bible is actually unique, and it's actually full of failed prophecies, there's lots of failed prophecies, not even messianic, there's lots of generic, unfulfilled prophecies. You get to that point and you're kind of like, what am I holding on to at this point? Like, why am I, what is it about Christianity that would lead me to be drawn to this thing, other than I kind of like some of Jesus' teachings? And so there was a short minute where I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll become a secular Christian, because we got lots of secular Jews. And I was like, well, maybe I'll just be a secular Christian. And you would be surprised how many pastors right now are in the pulpit and they're secular Christians. They don't believe this stuff is real anymore, but they love the teachings of Jesus and they feel like they could use it to do good in the world. There's a lot of them. Some of them are friends of mine that have reached out to me now that I've gone public and been like, hey, fucking, I get it, but I'm stuck. And so, like, I get it. I understand why people do that, but I wasn't willing to do that. Once I realized that I was, like, in the camp of maybe I'm a secular Christian, it was like, oh, I'm just not a Christian anymore. I have to be honest with myself.
Did you see my video, A Letter to Bob?
I don't know if I did.
Okay. It's a little bit shorter, and it's mostly it's me reading a letter that I wrote to one of my former pastors. And that particular former pastor is no longer in the pastorate. And he is the most intelligent of all the pastors that I've ever had. And so I wrote to him and I asked him, when you were preaching this, did you really believe it? And, how did you answer some of these questions? And unfortunately, he did not respond to my letter. So I just wrote the letter, and if I left the video that if he ever responds, I'll make another video with his response.
Yeah, you have to wonder, when you see someone leave the ministry, you know it wasn't overnight. Right? There was a process that led to this, and you always wonder, how long were they there, saying things that they didn't believe before they had the courage to leave? And I certainly understand that. I do remember there was in my deconstruction process, there were moments where I was like, listen, I really need to find something in the Bible to preach on, but it has to be something, first of all, that I'm motivated to preach about, because if I'm not motivated, no one else is motivated. And number two, something that I fully believe in, like it's a good teaching. And I remember the last sermon I ever preached, I was filling in for somebody else who was, their pastor unfortunately passed away, and they needed someone to fill in. And I remember, sitting there thinking, I don't know if I could preach any of this anymore. None of it. Because, I just don't believe any of it. And so I told myself, as I was, kind of writing that sermon, I was like, I'm just not going to do this ever again. Because I'm a phony. This is not me anymore, right? And so, but I was so lucky in that I had a career as an engineer. All the time that I was in ministry, I had a career already where I could make money. I never had to worry about, oh my gosh, what if I leave my church position and I can't pay my bills?
Now fuck up and move right here.
Enough that when things stopped, when I was unable to be honest with where I was, I could just flip the switch and say, oh, no more, we're done.
So, were you already working as an engineer, and you were working part-time as a pastor at that point?
Yeah. So what I really want to do is plant a church, or take an older church that seemed to be failing, and replant or rejuvenate. And that was one of the reasons why, when I was a young man, I was kind of talking over with my dad about future options. That was another reason why he was like, you absolutely have to finish your engineering degree, because if you're going to plant a church, you're not making any money. They're not paying you. You're lucky to get benefits. And so I was really lucky that I went to school, I had a job right out of school, didn't worry about that. Engineering is pretty, I can get a job anywhere I go. And so I was lucky that I was able to do that all the time while I was in ministry part-time. I had some options after seminary to do a full-time pastoral gig, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I already knew at that point that I was way too liberal and way not really a Christian anymore to survive in that type of a role.
Yeah, Guillermo says, wait, we have another godless engineer here?
It's true, and John and I have teamed up before as well. He's actually one of the first atheist channels I've ever watched on YouTube. Because I forget what happened, I was looking for a video, and it just popped up, and it was Godless Engineer. I was like, oh, I'm not the only one, let's go. And so I've been following John for a long time, but yeah, you'd be surprised, there's a lot of atheists in the engineering community. It's not overly dominated by religious types.
Yeah, there are certain professions that tend to be dominated by atheists, philosophers being number one.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny when Christians, say that, we know that God is real because of philosophy. And, okay, then why are most of the philosophers atheists?
Yeah, don't tell the philosophers, whatever you do.
You were saying you relate to GE. I like to team up with Guts Gibbon whenever possible.
Oh, yeah.
GG.
Yeah. Yeah, she's brilliant. It's funny getting into the atheist space to see how many brilliant people are here. Like I'm just, it's so. I feel like I'm so lucky to kind of like fall into this community and be surrounded by so many brilliant people, and like it's kind of cool. It's like remember when you were in church, you showed up at church and you get to meet all these new people, and it's kind of neat to get to meet everybody. I feel like I'm having a church experience in the atheist community where it's just fun getting to meet all the individuals in the community. And see like how each one of them has like there's something awesome about everybody, you know.
Okay. How is it with your family? Did you have any issues with your family when you deconstructed?
So, not terribly much, not really. My siblings kind of got it. They understood. We don't really. I think we have maybe 2 atheists in the family. That's about it. But nobody gave me a hard time. At the very beginning, my mother didn't like the idea. She didn't like that at all. But she, like I could tell, she kind of wrestled with it for a couple weeks, and then she was fine. Like she, you know. And so you know what? No one actually gave me a hard time about it. I was really lucky in that regard. There were some people that I would say that like extended relatives maybe that said some of the dumb stuff, like, oh, he just wanted to sin, or different, stuff like that. But like, these are people who didn't really know me all that well. Like, they're like super extended family. I couldn't care less about what they think. But like the people who actually knew me, like they knew that this was a sincere decision. Like I wouldn't have wasted 5 years and as many thousands of dollars as I did on Bible college and seminary, and then just throw it all away because I wanted to sin. I don't know if you know this about Christianity. You can sin all you want. You just have to pray for forgiveness.
Right. And if you're Catholic, you have to also say a few Hail Marys.
Oh, of course. Yeah, do a couple of those. Do a little bit of penance, you know.
Mm-hmm. Now, I have seen a Catholic website that I've featured a couple of times on my channel where they say that atheists can go to heaven. They say that an atheist lives according to the teachings of Jesus, even though they don't know they're believers, that they are believers just because they act as if they're believers.
So, I know this argument. There actually is kind of a case to be made for it. Because Paul mentions this at the beginning of Romans about how those that are without the law, when they follow the law, they're actually still doing the work that God desires. And there's something in like this idea of if you're following God's law, that means you're righteous, even if that law wasn't given to you. And so there's definitely this idea in the New Testament that like the righteous people won't be abandoned, even if they believe the wrong thing. The problem and the struggle is you've also got passages where Jesus and others will say things like, well, if you don't believe in Jesus, then you're doomed, no matter if you're righteous or not, right? But my understanding is, like, if we're going with the earliest strata of text, I think the earliest strata of text in the New Testament would indicate that the righteous would still inherit eternal life. This notion that, well, no, you have to be righteous, but also you really have to believe in Jesus. I think that came later. I think that came as this method of saying, no. You can't just be righteous. You actually have to give us your money and join this religion and support us, because otherwise you go to hell. I think that part of the doctrine was a later add-on as a way to coerce people into it.
And you've just demonstrated exactly what Fred said in the super chat. It's Justin's ability to draw on prior knowledge and conversation that impresses me. Thank you for the super chat, Fred.
God
Thanks, Fred. My memory's a really weird place. Unfortunately, while I can pick up a book and read it and I'll regurgitate it to you 10 years later, if you tell me that we got a meeting at 3 o'clock today, you're going to have to swing by my desk and drag me to the meeting because I won't remember it. It's a weird, some weird stuff happening inside of the cranium.
Damn it.
I get that. My memory used to be my best quality.
Damn it.
And that's why I always did so well in school, because I was really good at whatever a teacher threw at me, I could memorize and regurgitate it on test. I was also really good at figuring out what kinds of things the teacher liked, and so I loved essay tests, because I knew how to write an essay so the teacher would like it. But after 50, the memory starts to go. And now that I'm almost 65, it's really going. And there's just like this morning when I was thinking about introducing you, and I was going to bring up Seth Andrews. I was going, Seth, and I could not remember Seth Andrews' last name. And I thought, come on. I mean, I've met this guy in person. I watched his shows. How is it that I can't remember his name? But it happens. I sometimes will drop names that I know well.
It is what it is. It's the course of life. Like, I do know there's going to come a point in my life where, like, what I'm doing now is going to feel infinitely more difficult. Mm-hmm. And I know that for a fact because I'm almost identical to my dad's DNA. I look like him, I sound like him, I'm the same shape and size as he was, we've got the same thought patterns. And I remember when he was in his 60s, like when he was younger, he was sharp. He was really, really sharp. Funny, witty. But I remember in his 60s, he was really slow to understand things sometimes, and he forgot a lot. And I keep thinking to myself, there's going to come a day I'm going to be there, and I'm going to need somebody to have some grace with me. So, like, I need to, I need to expect it. But I think that's the course. That's the course of life. But you know what? Like,
God damn it!
As you age, like the stuff that you learned when you were much younger, I feel like a lot of that still sticks with you.
Yes.
It's like. What's the word? It's like imprinted on the brain.
God fucking damn it!
I can still pull up Bible verses very easily.
God damn it!
When I'm writing a script, I can easily think of Bible verses that go with what I'm saying. But to try to remember people's names, that's what's really going on.
Goddamn!
And thank you very much, Lapidalism, for the super chat.
Jesus fucking Christ!
Good to see you, class.
The fucking goddamn Christ!
Liberal Dragon said I'm 61 and my memory is terrible.
Jesus,
it just happened.
Fucking Christ.
Eventually I'll need glasses, I'll probably need hearing aids. The body just starts to wear out, and that's okay.
When you get cataracts, get the implants. I used to need glasses to see far away, and I don't anymore. Now I only need reading glasses because I have implants from cataracts.
Nice. I don't know what I'll end up needing. I do know, like, stuff that I see far away is starting to get a little bit blurry, but up close I'm good for now.
Okay. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Something that I'm sorry, what?
Smack Jack.
It's another friend of mine. It's Smack. I just call him Smack.
Okay. Smack says something that reassures me of the character of Justin is how he talks about his parenting. The safety and stability of having a good dad is incalculable for a child. He comes across as one of the good ones. Oh, cool.
Hey, thanks, Mac. I talk about my son a bit. There's nothing I enjoy more than getting to spend time with my son, and I get that life is busy as a parent, but I feel like I've got this wired biological need to love and protect my children,
Mm-hmm. So, how long after your deconstruction did you start doing YouTube?
Jesus,
you know what? I didn't start doing YouTube. It's been this fall will be 3 years. But what happened was, I wasn't really into video and social media. I was really into writing. I was always kind of a reader-writer. I used to run a website, and I remember I never wrote about social issues. I always wrote about biblical issues. But like I remember when Rhett and Link started their podcast, Ear Biscuits, and they talked about how they deconstructed from the religion?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of people gave them a really hard time. Like, they said all the horrible stuff about him, and I can tell they were really sincere. And a lot of their story resonated with me. But I couldn't find anybody online, on social media, that was like standing up and saying, hey, these are like real concerns that we should be talking about. And so, after writing about the topic a little bit and spending some time thinking about it, my thought was like, you know what? We actually need somebody who's got credentials in this field to like actually come in and start doing deconstruction stuff. Like, we really have to talk about some of these topics. They're actually really important. And it's, one of the reasons why I deconstructed. And so I first came in thinking I would just kind of get to do some response videos and maybe do some deconstruction topics. I never imagined in a million years that I would spend most of my time debating people. And yet that's where we are. What I discovered was making videos in doing live streams, a lot of Christians don't want to have discussions. They just want to yell at each other and debate. So I was like, okay, well, I guess we'll debate.
Okay. I have a question that I've been holding for you, which is from collapsibilism. When did you have your last eye exam?
It actually was about 6 months ago. And I was shocked, too, because it turns out that part of the reason why stuff far away starts to get blurry is only because of this eyeball right here. This one's like, hey, we're good to go. This guy's like, I don't think so, guy. And so, like, when I had to, like, do this and this, I discovered, like, oh, no, I can't, this is a problem. And so it's really weird. Like, even when I do get glasses eventually, it's going to be, like, different prescriptions for each eye, which is, it is what it is.
Yep. Okay, one of the things that I really appreciate about your show is the tone. Too many call-in shows devolve into shouting matches. And I really appreciate that yours is much more calm.
You know, I feel like it has an arc where it got a little bit less calm, and now I'm trying to bring it back down. But like when I first started streaming, it was funny. You'd be surprised by how different it is from now. When I first started streaming, if somebody came in, even if they agreed with me, if they came in and you could tell they're coming in hot, I'd settle them down and say, okay, calm down, we're just having a conversation here. And I was really gentle parenting everybody. And but I talked to so many vile believers over the years, the 3 years I've been on, that now I'm like, I don't know, maybe they need to be spanked. Maybe gentle parenting isn't right for everybody. So I'm still kind of feeling it out a little bit, but I do agree that in order to move the needle in the right direction, the audience needs to do two things. First, they need to have confidence in you. And demonstrating that you're confident typically means that you're in control. And the other thing is they also want to be able to hear what you're saying and be able to understand it without feeling like they need a new dictionary. And this is one of the things that I learned in homiletics, where if you're preaching a sermon to your church and you're using a bunch of words they don't know, like it might make you feel cool because you're using big words, but they don't care what you're saying. They're already bored, they're already lost, they can't follow along. So I try to make it so that every person in the room can follow the conversation, no matter what we're talking about. I feel like that helps. And if there's something that I need to do later to make it better, hopefully somebody will tell me and I'll be able to integrate it.
We have over 200 people watching, and that's the first time I have ever hit that number when I have done a live stream. So thanks for bringing in so many people.
Friends, if you're not following Godless Granny, I've been following Godless for like at least a year and a half, so make sure you are.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, one of the things that one reason why I frequently don't watch call-in shows is I find that the calls tend to be the same subjects over and over and over. Do you feel that way, or do you feel like you get a good variety?
I feel like that's the case. And one of the reasons why I do the live stream the way that I do it is because of that. So there's a lot of live streams where people will call in and they'll expect the interlocutor to provide the argument. And when the argument fails, it's just the end. Like that's it. But you can only do that so many times. So one thing I always try to do is like, okay, when an argument fails, someone brings an argument, then I said, okay, that didn't work, let me give you an argument. So now I get to bring something new and say, listen, not only do I reject your argument, here's an argument for specifically why your God doesn't exist. And I feel like people resonate with that because it's easy to sit back there and just say, nope, unconvincing, doesn't work. It's a little more interesting to say, not only does it not work, here's why I can prove my position rather than just saying you haven't proven your position. I feel like that does help a lot with this whole I've heard the same argument a million times, because then I get to control some of the argumentation. I can say, okay, here's something new that maybe you haven't thought about, and that helps to keep it interesting. Because I get it. I've tuned in to some of the call-in shows, and like I know, like I've heard this argument. So if I hear the fine-tuning argument one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. So I tried to alleviate some of that by bringing my own arguments, and I've got a cheat sheet full of arguments. Some of them I haven't used yet. And so sometimes like I'm scanning through the cheat sheet while I'm live, thinking like, okay, what is a new argument that I haven't used on the audience yet that I can use after this guy's argument goes bust? And so I suspect that helps a little bit.
Okay.
God damn it.
When you come up with a new argument, where does that usually come from?
Stupid!
I'll tell you what, there's two places. So one place is usually by watching other creators. I do make it a point, though, to almost never regurgitate somebody else's argument. I don't like that. I'm not a big fan of that. There's very few exceptions where I'll do that. And typically I'll do that because it's like something I had already been trying to formalize at one point. I just hadn't been able to formalize it. And then I heard someone do it and said, that's it. That's how you formalize it. So rarely will I try to reuse somebody's argument, but when
I'm about to get myself into the hole.
My brain is being tipped off by other people because they'll say something, and I'm like, oh, you know what? If you do it this way, you can form a really good argument. The other way, honestly, is just reading the Bible. I'm at a point now where, like, if I pick up a Bible and I'm like reading in 2 Kings, and 2 Kings contradicts something that's over in Samuel, I read enough of the Bible that I'll catch it. Like, I'll catch it, like, oh, nope, that's not how it was in Samuel. And so I'm really lucky in this position where I've spent so much time reading the Bible that literally just opening up and spending an hour reading it, a lot of times I'll come up with a new argument just reading the Bible because I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that other time it said this. And so like I've got a whole list of contradictions on my cheat sheet, and almost all of them are contradictions that I found while reading the text, and I've yet to find like an actual good answer for it. So reading the Bible and listening to other people in the field talk, or I would say interviews, like even if you're not watching debates, watching interviews, like on your channel and other channels, like they're really helpful because like my brain can only do so much work. Like there's so many good arguments out there that I'm waiting, like my brain has been waiting to hear, that unless I'm watching other channels, like sometimes my brain never gets to hear them. So I watch a lot of in all of my free time, whether I'm at the gym or I'm traveling somewhere, I watch a lot of channels just like this one, and trying to always find something new and interesting that will better what I'm doing.
I think all of us sharpen each other. Because, there are arguments that I've made, and then I go watch another atheist, and they make it better. And so I realized, okay, I need to revise my argument a little bit because this way of saying it is better.
Yeah, and that's the cool part about the community that we're in, is that sometimes you can have an idea, and you thought it was good, and then you see somebody else doing it better, and you're like, oh my gosh, that means I could get better, right? So like, I feel like there's always room for improvement, and you're always learning stuff. Like one of my favorite channels is Thinker's channel on TikTok. And she has such a unique perspective of looking at Bible verses. Like she's been on an arc right now with Jezebel, but like the stuff she's drawing from the Jezebel story that I never thought about before is really cool. So like I love consuming other people's content. People know I'm like eternally online. I'm always in somebody else's live stream commenting.
What is your favorite argument? Or do you have a favorite argument?
So my bread and butter, the argument that I when I first started debating, I ran religiously, pun intended, was the argument that Jesus fulfilled 0 prophecies. Because it's such a... When I very first, like my first 2 live streams, I was kind of tongue-in-cheek. I would say Jesus only fulfilled 1 prophecy, but then it would be like just riding the donkey. But he really didn't fulfill that one anyway. So like my bread and butter when I first started, which I think for a lot of people was a little bit jarring, was just saying, no, he fulfilled 0 prophecies, not even 1. And people's heads, when they hear that, kind of explode. Because like, the one thing I know about Jesus is that he fulfilled these prophecies. Like, no, he didn't. And so that was, for a long time, like I did that topic so much, even I got bored of it. The other thing that I'm really enjoying right now, and it's not because the topic is all that good, or all that fun, The reason why I keep doing it is because it's a slam dunk. It's always a slam dunk. Every time you bring it up, it's a slam dunk. And that is that the Trinity is logically incoherent. And there is no way, if you get somebody on your live stream who's really into philosophy, there's no way they're going to survive the Trinity debate. They'll never survive it. They have to say, well, the Trinity doesn't follow these laws of logic, but maybe there's other laws of logic. So like, for me, I'm having a lot of fun with the Trinity debate right now. Not because I love it so much, just because like I just love watching like philosophy people's heads explode when they just give me this 30-minute argumentation on how important the laws of logic are and how they prove God and this and that. And like, okay, you love the laws of logic, let's talk about the Trinity, and then their brain is short-circuiting because they're realizing that the God they believe in doesn't agree with their philosophical standpoint.
My favorite failed prophecy is in Ezekiel. And the reason it's my favorite is because the Bible even tells you that it failed.
26 and 29 about Tyre?
Yep.
Yeah. Good one.
And when I bring that up, people try to hedge, well, yeah, it kind of was. Well, it kind of wasn't. It even says it wasn't.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, this is really well known, by the way. So, like, if you go to Bible college or seminary, this is just one of those things that you'll learn about eventually just reading the book. So, like, for example, in my introduction to Old Testament, one of the things that we had to do is we had to read every book that was part of the topic. You'd have like introduction to the Old Testament, and it would be like Torah. And then your next class would be over wisdom literature, and then your third class might be on the prophetic literature. And so that's kind of how it was structured typically. But while you're in those classes, you're required to read every single book within that genre, and then you're writing papers on it, doing research on it. So when you get to the prophets, these issues in Ezekiel become the talking point in class because people are like, okay, this is weird. Let's talk about this.
God damn it!
So like, it's funny how many Christians have no idea that this is there. But if you talk to someone who went to seminary, they already know about this, and they're like, well, God changed his mind.
Okay.
He didn't fail. He changed his mind.
Now, is that possible with a being that is timeless?
Yeah, so that's such a good point because not only do we find in Numbers 23:19 and 1 Samuel 15:29 it says that God is not immortal, that he would change his mind, nor a man that he would lie, or vice versa. So like we have this overarching like idea that God can't say things that are untrue, but also even if those verses weren't there, the idea that God is all-knowing and he's outside of time requires that he would never get a wrong guess. Because he already knows what's going to happen, he should never guess wrong about the future. And so there's a lot of bad apologetics trying to fix the issue with Tyre. They'll say, well, no, actually, the way it was predicted, Alexander the Great came in after Nebuchadnezzar and finished the job, so technically it came true. And there's a lot of really bad apologetics, but the problem with all the apologetics, every single one of them, is that none of them address the fact that chapter 29 tells you it didn't come true. The God is admitting to it, and that's okay. You don't need the apologetics.
Okay, we have another super chat from Smack who said, I can't get over how boss Satan is in Job. God is the straight man, and Satan gets away with sass. It's in the text. God, where did you come from, Satan? LOL. Why would they write like that? Yeah.
It's a really funny story, and to me, Job was written at a time period where the development of somebody responsible for bringing evil and destruction was necessary. They already stole that from the Zoroastrian religion. And so it's interesting, by the time you get to Job, because of how much evil is in the world and how much disaster is in the world, you have to give Satan more and more power. So Satan in the book of Job is like, he's basically like almost as powerful as God. It's pretty wild to think about. And God is like granting him deference, like, hey, you're down here on the earth. Tell me what's up. what's going on, big dog? And so it's really funny that God treats him like a coworker, basically. He's not treating him like a subordinate.
Climate Green asks, was it Big Job or Little Job? I'm not sure if he means that Big Joe or Little Joe, but he's obviously referencing Job.
Yeah, I think so.
When you were in the seminary, did they talk much about the historical aspects of the Bible, like whether or not the Exodus really happened or whether the conquest of Canaan really happened?
Yeah, they do. With these touchy topics, what the professors that you're going to have typically at a good seminary, they do a really good job of not saying that it's true or untrue. They do a really good job of saying, here's all the literature on the topic. Go and do your own research and make up your mind for yourself. And to me, I still think that's kind of the hallmark of a good school, is the professor doesn't tell you what to think. The professor is like, here's the available data. Go figure it out. And that's the job of education, is to teach you to think for yourself, not to teach you to believe what they believe. And so we had a lot of uncomfortable moments in class where we talked about some of this stuff, and the professor would not give you answers. And he's like, that's for you to wrestle with. And so while these were topics we talked about, they weren't topics that we got satisfactory answers for in class, for good reason, because typically it's not that great of an answer for it. But I do remember specifically I had one professor in Bible college, a delightful human being, Eugene Carpenter. He wrote a really well-known Exodus commentary right before he passed.
Fucking Christ.
But
fucking goddamn
he was
Christ.
one person that would give you his theological opinions, but typically it wasn't because he wanted you to believe what he believed. It was just because he was kind of an open book. He didn't care. Like, he did, and he was this really cool dude. But I do remember there was some occasions when we were doing Genesis in Hebrew class. So a lot of times when you learn Hebrew, you start working through Genesis. It's a really easy form of Hebrew. You find a lot of the words in Hebrew you'll find elsewhere in the other narratives. But I remember him specifically talking in class about, well, this story is not literal. This is a theological story, which decidedly is like a really, it's a huge pivot for some Christians to look at Genesis and say, this isn't a real literal story, this is a theological story. And then he actually gave us materials. Like, look at some of these other Babylonian stories that are in the same vein as this one. We should be reading this story the same way you would read the Enuma Elish, right? And so we did have a couple professors here and there that tried to soften the blow of like, hey, this isn't real, by saying, well, it doesn't have to be real, it's just a theological story. But I would say most Christians are not comfortable with that. Most Christians want it to be literal, and the reason why they want it to be literal is because they're smarter than the professors, because they know the New Testament isn't true unless it's literal, unless Adam and Eve really existed, unless there really was a corruption of the seed, unless all of this stuff was literal, nothing in the New Testament works anymore. But that's how you know that your professors are agnostic, because they're willing to take these texts and say, it didn't really happen. And, they're agnostic. They just don't say it out loud.
That's one thing I do appreciate about William Lane Craig. While I obviously don't buy into his apologetics, I appreciate that he admits that all of Genesis 1 through 11 is mytho-history. And he admits that Adam and Eve had to have lived at least 200,000 years ago. And because he is so well accepted in the Christian community, he's starting to try to get the Christian community to accept some of these ideas.
Yeah, I would say on the academic level, like if you have a PhD in biblical studies, the odds that you think Genesis and Exodus were literal, like word for word true stories is going to be rare. That's something you find in the pews, but you don't find in the classroom.
Were some of your fellow seminarians young Earth creationists when they started?
Good question. It's hard to know exactly how many. I would say a lot of the people were like me. There were a lot of people in seminary that had already been thinking about these topics and were already okay accepting that maybe they didn't happen as written. Like these were like mythological stories. So I would say like I'm going to say my seminary in particular, I would say at least half of the people that I went to school with would have agreed with me that a lot of these are mythological and theological stories, that they're not literally true stories. But I would say there's definitely half of them that were still evangelical, conservative enough that they would like, I don't know, maybe it was real history. But you know what? We don't. The seminary I went to didn't really take polls, like questionnaires or anything like that. Some seminaries will actually do that kind of thing. We never did that kind of thing. So it's hard to gauge exactly where everybody was. But I would say, just based on my interaction with other students, I would say we were about half of the student body would have been on the liberal side of things. So we were like ordaining women. We weren't like chastising gay people. Like we were pretty progressive for an evangelical seminary.
Okay. Dr. Kip Davis says, but people really need to stop using that word, and he's referring to mythohistory. The only people who use mythohistory are Christian apologists. It's not a recognized technical term in any field of antiquity.
God damn it.
And while, Dr. Kip is absolutely right,
He probably won't give me that fucking
I
poem
do
right here.
think the word does help soften the blow for those who are just diehard.
I can dick up one of those fucking
history.
rooks. Yep, I knew he was gonna
Yeah.
do that fucking shit.
It is interesting because like,
Now fuck up
if
and
you
over
read
this
a
fucking shit
comparative
right
story
here, son of a
to
bitch.
somebody that is very similar to Genesis, they hear it like, oh, that's just a story, it's not true. But for some reason, they've been trained to believe that Genesis is a true story. And I get it, because to be fair, the New Testament treats Genesis like it is a true story. So it's kind of like, what are you supposed to do? I'm reading it as a human being. It seems like mythology. My religion says it's not mythology. It's a true story. You're stuck kind of between a rock and a hard place there if you're a Christian.
And we have Christian in the chat that says Genesis was literal.
I'm sure it was word for word literal.
Okay. Well, that actually was
God
my problem,
damn it.
and that is why when my deconstruction came, it was not a gradual thing. It was very sudden. Because I believe that the Bible was the complete inerrant Word of God, and if even one word of it was not true, then I had no basis for believing
I
any of
remember
it.
hearing that too.
And it was the flood story that did it for me. It was proven to me that the flood didn't happen, and once that happened, it was just poof. The whole thing is gone.
Yeah, that's pretty common. There was a Mormon, I'm going to call him an ex-Mormon, I apologize, an ex-Mormon who talked about this. Like it was the first video he ever created. And he was suggesting that, like, hey, if the Noah's flood story isn't real, and he went through all the reasons why it couldn't be real, he's like, it seems like a bunch of this probably isn't real either. Like, why are we just assuming this stuff really happened? And I agree. Like, once you get to a point where you're looking at one of them, like, foundational stories, and you're like, well, that clearly didn't happen, the next thing you do is perfectly natural. It's going to be like, well, what else didn't happen? So why would I think this is the only one?
Yeah. And the most shocking for me was when Apologia revealed to me that we don't know who wrote the Gospels. That was that blew my mind, and he's the one that first introduced me to that concept. And I imagine you probably talked about that in the seminary.
Oh yeah, for sure. Gospel authorship is like a real hot topic in Bible college and seminary. You gotta remember, most people in Bible college and seminary are going to study the New Testament. So I was the weird one. Both times I focused primarily on the Hebrew Bible, but most Christians aren't. They go to school, they want to learn Greek, they want to learn Roman history, they want to learn Mediterranean history, they want to know everything about the New Testament. And because that's so ubiquitous in Bible college and seminary, gospel authorship is a super hot topic. But you know what? Like,
I'll dick you up, you
I
son of a
know many
bitch.
people in the seminary that cared about the authorship once they saw the data, and they're like, yeah, maybe Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John didn't write these things. I don't think it deterred most of them, but for me personally, I found it to be a problem. So I'm like, listen, the same thing with the unauthentic Pauline letters. the thought that was in my mind was, and especially when we learn about the late addition to Mark chapter 16.
Oh my
The
God!
thought crosses the mind, like, listen, if they're willing to
Oh my fucking
invent
God.
text, if they're willing to fake letters,
Oh my
and
fucking
they're willing to put
God
names
damn!
on text when we don't know they actually wrote
Fucking
them,
God!
then it's like, why are we actually trusting them with the
Oh
most
my
important
fucking
words ever?
God
Like
damn.
this whole story is like the most important story ever told. But like we've also demonstrated that they're willing to lie. So I'm kind of like, why are we trusting them? It
Fucking
seems
goddamn.
like a ridiculous thing to do.
Good goddamn God!
If
fuck
they
it.
are writing fake letters under somebody else's name because they want the authority to be granted to the letter, that's like huge for me that the early Christian community was willing to accept this type of written
My fucking
nonsense.
God!
So for me, the gospel authorship was part of that pie, but I thought it was a big piece of that pie because when you're growing up in church, you're told that there were like actual eyewitnesses, and they're typically the Gospels. But once you realize, oh, there are no eyewitnesses, that's huge. Like, what do you mean? The people who actually saw it didn't write anything?
God!
Yeah. And speaking of writing, we have a question from Clement Green. Do you write?
I do, Clement. I actually really love writing. I apologize to everybody for the 20th or 30th time that my book is not finished yet. I promise I'm working on it as fast as I am capable of working on it.
God
It is
damn
a
it!
long one, but I actually really enjoy writing, and maybe one day I'll get back to writing articles again. But yeah, it's super enjoyable for me because you can put your thoughts on paper into something organized. And then it's just there forever. You put it on the internet, you put it in a journal, and other people will eventually stumble upon it, and they'll get to read something cool. Hopefully something cool.
Jesus fucking goddamn!
Bryce
fucking
asks,
goddamn
says, during my
fucking
apologetics
cunt,
phase,
Christ.
an atheist pointed out that I had already decided what was true, and therefore would lead all evidence where I wanted it to go, different than how I treated every other claim.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've seen this in real time. You've seen Christians will read the Bible and assume it's true, and then you can see them read something in like the Book of Mormon or in the Quran, and almost immediately discount it. Having known nothing about the Quran and really don't know anything about the Bible, they just give preference to the Bible as being true because that's what they knew growing up. That's what they were taught to do.
And we have a good question here from I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
Oh my fucking good God!
How
fucking
did you guys
God
deconstruct
damn.
the idea of an afterlife? For me, when the Bible just went poof, I have no reason to believe the Bible. The Bible was the only reason I had for thinking that there was an afterlife. And so when I no longer believed the Bible, I had no reason to think that there was an afterlife either. How about you, Justin?
I think I was more stubborn. So when I left Christianity, I still wanted to believe in a God and an afterlife. And people who know my channel kind of probably heard me say this a lot. I really started to deconstruct the afterlife idea when I started going back and watching some of the Carl Sagan films and whatnot. Because I really, like, the thing that kept bothering me was like, okay, if there's an afterlife, whether it's good or bad, where? Where is it happening, right? And most people think that the afterlife is like here. That's why we have ghosts and hauntings. And like, so you die and your ghost is here on the earth. Like, okay, that's interesting, maybe. But then I thought, like, well, I was like, well, the earth is going to be destroyed eventually. Like, the sun in about 1 billion years is going to burn up the earth. In about 4 billion years, we're supposed to be colliding with the Andromeda Galaxy. The odds that we'll be destroyed in that collision seem pretty high. And if we outlive any of that, then we might end up with the heat death of the universe. If the universe is cyclical, then we'll have the heat death, or almost heat death, and then we'll be drawn back into another hot dead state. Like, there's no good cosmological scenario where there's a safe place in the universe, right? So I'm like, if there is an afterlife, it has to be in a different universe. But I'm like, what a silly notion. Now I have to invent alternative universes for the afterlife, and to me, I just, at that point, I was like, I feel like I'm being, this is just wishful thinking. I'm I just wasn't ready to let go of it. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, I'm being silly. It's time to let go of this nonsense.
Well, one thing that I thought of, and I'm sure that some other atheists kind of helped shape my thinking a little bit, that became a question for me was the ascension. When Jesus ascended, did he ascend to another place within this universe, or did he ascend to some place outside of this universe? And if he ascended to some place inside of this universe, even though it may be extremely difficult, we should be able to find him. With the Hubble Space Telescope, or we should be able to find heaven somewhere within this universe. And if he left this universe and went to another universe, what was the ascension all about? There would be no purpose for it, because going to have to at some point simply disappear from this universe and appear in another one. And if he is in a physical body, that universe has to be a physical universe.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's not in a physical body, then where did his body go? I mean, what was the whole point of the resurrection if he doesn't need the physical body? And we have reached another milestone. There are over 300 people viewing now.
Let's go. That's what's up.
Okay, Bryce says, learning psychology and neurology destroys the idea of a soul and an afterlife. The brain does everything. Without it, there is no conscious experience.
So, what you're saying about Jesus' body is like, I guess we don't get to talk about it enough in the debate space, but it's one of my favorite topics. Because we explicitly know in 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says he has a different body. He's in a body. It's not an immaterial existence. So Jesus' body must be somewhere, but where? And the only thing you can do is say, well, he's up in the sky, which is what the ancients did. They believed the gods were in the sky. Or you can say that he's in an alternative universe. What you can't say is that he's in this universe, because he's clearly not. Like some of the other, like the Mormons have like Kolob. Like, well, he's on a different planet. Like, okay, yeah, that's what happened. But this idea of heaven for me was such a problem with the Bible, because both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, in all of the comparative literature, all of it, heaven isn't a remote thing far away that you can't see. Heaven was literally the sky above your head. That's it. Even in the writings of Plato, you read in the myth of air. You'll find that in the Republic, where he has like a near-death experience. What's he do? He goes up to the clouds in the skies. All of the ancient literature we have tells us that heaven is the sky, where the clouds and the birds are, where the firmament is on top. And that's why we find in the Babylonian literature, they built these large ziggurats. The general idea was if we build a ziggurat large enough, it will like act like it's a mountain. Because they believe that the gods who lived in the skies could descend to the earth using the mountains. It's like a bridge between the two worlds. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And in fact, at the top, that's why you've heard about the hanging gardens surrounding the ziggurats. Well, they're trying to mimic God's throne, where God lives. God's lived on the mountaintops, surrounded by these lush cedar forests, right? And a lot of times the cedar forests were like guarded by guardians like Humbaba or somebody else like that. But the reality is, the ancient world is just full of this idea that the sky is where the gods are. It's clean and pure. It's unlike what we have down here. It's dirty and dusty and, and full of sickness. And so you can see some of this playing out in the writings about their ziggurats. So there was one that's called The Gateway Between Heaven and Earth. And there's there's a poem dedicated to the building of one ziggurat that says in the middle of it, "O house that reaches heaven like a great mountain." So this is idea that the gods just live above us in the sky. And if we can get up there, or we can have them come down here, like, awesome, now we get to commune with the gods. That's why the tower in Genesis was so problematic. Because now mankind could enter the realm of the gods. And even in the book of Jasher, it spells this out. It says that the problem was that now human beings could storm the heavens. They could invade the heavens. It wasn't because they were prideful. It's because, like, no, we have to protect our space. This is our space. And
Interesting. Yeah, that completely changes the story of Babel.
Oh, it changes everything. But that's what the ancient world believed. Like, even in the Epic of Gilgamesh, he's like, hey, who can climb to the heavens to become immortal? Like, we can't make it up there. But that's the idea, that we can, if we climb high enough, we could get immortality. And there's a Babylonian tale about a snake and an eagle, where they make a deal. The snake wants to ascend into the heavens, the realm of the gods, and he makes a deal with an eagle to fly him up there. But it doesn't turn out the way it's supposed to go. There's some dirty tricks played on each other along the way, and it's a really cool story. But yeah, the ancient literature are filled with references to the sky being the home of the gods, and we've got tons of Bible passages that says that Yahweh lives up there, that Yahweh lives in the sky. Psalm 2:4 says he sits in the heavens and laughs. Psalm 50 verse 1 says, praise God in his sanctuary, praise him in his mighty firmament. Deuteronomy 26, look down from your holy habitation from the heavens and bless your people, Israel. So all these references, God's just up there in the heavens, looking down, seeing what's happening down here from the upper part of the firmament. And even in the writings of the rabbis, if you read the Talmud, the rabbis talk about God's throne just above the firmament. So if you go to Barakot is one, but there's a couple different references in the Talmud, in Bereshit Rabbah, and also commentary by Ramban, and in Pirkei. What we find are all these explanations of, like, if there's water on top of the firmament, how does God live up there? And they have this elaborate idea of, like, at the top of the sky, we got this firmament, then there's an air pocket, and above the air pocket is the waters of the heavens that are being suspended by God's Spirit. And so that's how God gets to live at the top of the firmament. And that's where people find God. Remember in Exodus 24, the 70 elders, along with Nadab, Abihu, and Aaron and Moses, they go up on the mountaintop to commune with God. Because if you want to commune with God, you got to go up to the sky somehow. And that's why everything in the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament that talks about God's dwelling place is always a reference to the sky. Hashemayim in Hebrew, Oranos in Greek, just refers to the literal sky. It doesn't refer to anything past the firmament.
I normally like to keep my show to 1 hour, and I had promised you that we would only go for 1 hour. But I have just a couple more things. Do you have another 5 or 10 minutes, or do you have someplace you need to be?
No. Whatever you got going on, I'm happy to stick around and kind of chew the fat, as they say.
Okay. You know, one thing that I always thought was really weird, even as a believer, is when a pastor would say to us, let's look to God in prayer, and everyone bows their head. And I get why they were bowing their heads, you know, it's supposed to be a sign of respect. But if we are going to look to God in prayer, we should be looking up.
It's so true, and it's one of those things that, like, if you spent 5 seconds thinking about it, you're like, oh yeah, that's obviously the thing. And the Bible tells you to. So if you read the dedication of the temple, when Solomon dedicates the temple, and he talks like, hey, when we turn from you and go about sinning, when we look up to heaven and pray, and it's like, oh yeah, the Bible all the time is telling you to look up to the heavens to pray, and we don't really do that. Do you think it's cultural? Like, is it like
well,
a sign
there
of
is one
respect?
Bible passage that does tell you to do that, and that is the one with the Pharisee in the temple, and Jesus chides him for looking up, and then the other one says, I'm just a wretched sinner, and he's looking down, and Jesus praises that one, and that's probably where we get it from.
Yeah, I feel like some of it's probably cultural as well. Like there became a development where, in order for God to hear your petition, you had to abase yourself. Mm-hmm. And we do find that in the ancient literature. Like if you read, have you been through any of the Amarna tablets? They're so cool. there are correspondences between the petty kings in Canaan and the pharaoh just before the Bronze Age collapse. And one of the things that you find over and over again is all of these subordinates, when they address the pharaoh, they always have to abase themselves as much as humanly possible in an attempt to capture the interest of the pharaoh. So they say, like, I am the dirt between your toes, I lay on my face 7 times and on my back 7 more times. Nonsense like that. And I feel like at some point that became culturally entrenched in this religion, where like, well, God can't hear your prayer unless you really humble yourself. Like, you have to be slime. You have to like be underneath the rug with the insects before God can hear you.
Okay, Smack says that I missed one of his super chats, and I am going back through all of them, and I do not see it. Possibly it came in while my internet was down, because my internet did go down for a couple minutes. If you sent in another super chat and I missed it, I don't see it. Sorry,
damn it.
Yeah, that happens sometimes.
God fucking damn it.
Amon Ra says, just hearing these two talk in the same video is worth $20. Thank you for doing so. Thank you so much, Amon Ra. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Amon. I do see on my end the super chat that Smack sent, and I think it was when your internet chopped for a little bit there.
Okay.
I can read it real quick. It says, something I learned from DZ was how obvious Genesis is just an explanation for why life sucks. Yeah. You can practically hear early flock. You can practically hear early flock going, why life sucks if love God, and Genesis is relax, bro, here's why. Yeah, and Godless, you probably have heard this before. Genesis seems to be what's referred to as an etiology. It's an explanation. Well, why are things the way they are? Oh, here's why things are the way that they are. But I don't know if these ideological tales were meant to be taken as cold, hard facts, or like, well, this is kind of our best understanding.
Jenkins says, love this duo. Are you adopting grandkids? Asking for a friend. I am absolutely adopting grandkids. If you join the channel, you have the option of joining as a grandbaby, a grandtoddler, or a grandchild. Unfortunately, I misspelled grandtoddler when I put that in there, and I cannot find a way to change it. And on my Patreon, you also have the same choices of being a grandbaby, a grandchild, or a grandtoddler.
That's great.
Okay, final question. What direction do you see your channel going in the future? Do you want to just keep going as you are, or is there anything you want to do different in the future?
So one thing that I did in 2025, which I'll continue to do, is that I broke off onto a second channel that is for nothing but debates. I've got a channel, DZ Debates. Literally, if you just want to tune in and watch a debate, old school YouTube format, that's where you're going to go. My main channel, Deconstruction Zone, I'm still doing the debates. I'm recording them in vertical phone feed. But I also have all my other content there. I've got interviews there. I've got deconstruction stories there. I'm doing response videos. This year, I'm getting together with some creators, and we're doing response videos to apologetic videos rather than just debates. So my main channel is going to be like a catch-all for like just all the stuff that I like to do. I want to branch out this year and do more than just debating people. I want to get involved in some response videos back and forth with apologists, and kind of grow the channel in that particular way. But so that's the two different things that I got going on this year. So if you're watching DZ Debates, almost nothing will change. If you're watching my main channel, you should see a lot more content this year that is not debate.
Okay, very good, very good. And with that, we are going to finish off the show. Next week, my guests are going to be Steve Russell and Professor Sargent, also known as Limited Light. And they're going to come and tell us about their story, which I found absolutely fascinating as well. But I want to thank you so much, Justin, for coming on. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. It was an absolute blast.
Great. And thanks to all of you in the chat. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your questions. And until next time, live your life.
Suck my fucking dick. God fucking damn it. So fucking goddamn Christ. So fucking goddamn Holy Ghost fucking Christ. Holy Ghost. Holy goddamn Ghost. Holy
You
Ghost.
stand alone at Proctor's Ledge in Salem, Massachusetts. The weather outside is unseasonably warm for late September, the kind of sticky heat that makes your clothes cling to your skin
Now
and
fucking
turns
with me
the air
that
thick
goddamn
as
hole
soup.
on here.
You've been granted access to stand on the exact spot where they hanged them. Not at the top of Gallows Hill where tourists think it happened. Here, at this rocky outcrop between Proctor Street and Pope Street. This small wooded area that remained unmarked, unacknowledged, deliberately forgotten for 324 years, until archaeologists proved in 2016 that this was the place. 19 people died here, 14 women and 5 men. They were dragged up this slope. Nooses were placed around their necks, and they were hanged for witchcraft. But witchcraft was not the real crime. The real crime was that they lived in a Puritan society where deviation from absolute religious conformity was intolerable, where the authority of ministers was absolute, where the slightest hint of spiritual rebellion could get you killed. The last mass execution happened on September 22nd, 1692. 8 people that day. Martha Corey was 72 years old. She had made the mistake of openly questioning whether the young girls claiming to be bewitched were telling the truth. Mary Eastie was 58. Her crime was being related to Rebecca Nurse, who had already been hanged in July. Alice Parker, Anne Pudietta, who was 70, Mary Parker, who was 55, Margaret Scott, who was 77, Wilmot Redd, and Samuel Wardwell, who was 49, all hanged. Their bodies left to dangle as a warning to anyone else who might question Puritan authority. 3 days earlier, on September 19th, they had done something worse to Giles Corey. He was 81 years old. When arrested on charges of witchcraft, he refused to enter a plea. Not guilty, not innocent, nothing. Because in Massachusetts law, if you refused to plead, they could not try you. And if they could not try you, they could not confiscate your property. Giles Corey had sons. He wanted them to inherit his land, so he said nothing. The court ordered him pressed to death. They stripped him naked, laid him on the ground, placed a wooden board on his chest, and piled stones on top of the board. More stones, and more, crushing his ribs, collapsing his lungs. For 2 days he lay there, slowly being crushed to death. While witnesses said that each time the sheriff asked him to enter a plea, Giles Corey said only 2 words: more weight. On the second day, his tongue was forced out of his mouth by the pressure. The sheriff pushed it back in with his cane, and finally Giles Corey died. The only person in American history to be executed by pressing. The Puritans did this. The same Puritans who came to America seeking religious freedom. The same Puritans who are celebrated in American mythology as the founders of New England, the Pilgrims of Plymouth Rock, the city on a hill. They fled persecution in England, and then they created a society in Massachusetts where persecution was not just accepted, but mandated by law, where religious dissent was a crime, where women who spoke too boldly could be hanged, where an 81-year-old man could be crushed to death for refusing to cooperate with a show trial. How did it come to this? How did a movement that started with genuine religious reform, with a desire to purify the Church of England and return to biblical Christianity, how did it end with 19 corpses swaying from ropes at Proctor's Ledge? How did people who claimed to follow Jesus Christ become the executioners of their own neighbours? The answers begin not in Salem, not in Massachusetts, but in England, in the 1560s, with a generation of clergy who returned from exile and discovered that the English Reformation had not gone far enough, with men who believed that compromise with Catholic traditions was spiritual treason, with a movement that would reshape England, tear it apart in civil war, execute a king, and plant colonies in America that would define the character of a nation for centuries to come. The Puritans. Who were they? What did they believe? Why did they matter? And what happened when their dream of building a godly society ran headlong into the messy reality of human nature, political power, and religious extremism? The term Puritan did not exist in the 1530s when the English Reformation began. It was coined in the 1560s as an insult, a label applied by opponents to describe people who wanted to purify the Church of England beyond what Queen Elizabeth I had authorised. But to understand Puritanism, you have to start earlier. You have to start with King Henry VIII. In 1534, Henry VIII broke England away from the Roman Catholic Church, not because he had theological objections to Catholicism, because the Pope refused to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon so he could marry Anne Boleyn. Henry declared himself supreme head of the Church of England. He dissolved the monastery Elizabeth I had authorised. But to understand Puritanism, you have to start earlier. You have to start with King Henry VIII. In 1534, Henry VIII broke England away from the Roman Catholic Church, not because he had theological objections to Catholicism, because the Pope refused to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon so he could marry Anne Boleyn. Henry declared himself supreme head of the Church of England. He dissolved the monasteries. He confiscated church property. The Pope long. And what happened when their dream of building a godly society ran headlong into the messy reality of human nature, political power? Believed that the English Reformation had not gone far enough, with men who believed that compromise...
Does she have a spit effect on with
Catholic traditions was spiritual treason, with a movement that would reshape England, tear it apart in civil war, execute a king, and plant colonies in America that would define the character of a nation for centuries to come? The Puritans. Who were they? What did they believe? Why did they matter? And what happened when their dream of building a godly society ran headlong into the messy reality of human nature, political power, and religious extremism? The term Puritan did not exist in the 1530s when the English Reformation began. It was coined in the 1560s as an insult, a label applied by opponents to describe people who wanted to purify the Church of England beyond what Queen Elizabeth I had authorised. But to understand Puritanism, you have to start earlier. You have to start with King Henry VIII. In 1534, Henry VIII broke England away from the Roman Catholic Church, not because he had theological objections to Catholicism, because the Pope refused to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon so he could marry Anne Boleyn. Henry declared himself supreme head of the Church of England. He dissolved the monasteries, he confiscated church property, he executed those who refused to acknowledge his authority. But Henry did not make England Protestant. He created a national Catholic Church that happened to be independent of Rome. Real Protestant reform came under Henry's son Edward VI, who became king in 1547 at age 9. Edward was a true believer. He was surrounded by Protestant advisors who pushed radical reforms. The Book of Common Prayer was introduced. The Mass was abolished. Priests were allowed to marry. Images and altars were removed from churches. For 6 years, from 1547 to 1553, England moved rapidly toward Protestantism, and then Edward died. He was 15 years old, and his older half-sister Mary became queen. Mary was a devout Catholic. Her mother had been Catherine of Aragon, the wife Henry had divorced. Mary hated Protestantism. She hated everything it represented, and she was determined to bring England back to Rome. Mary's reign lasted 5 years, and in those 5 years she burned approximately 280 Protestants at the stake. Bishops, ministers, lay people, men, women, even a few children. The burnings were public spectacles. Huge crowds gathered to watch. Some victims recanted at the last minute and were spared. Others went to their death singing hymns. The most famous was Thomas Cranmer, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who had helped write the Book of Common Prayer. He initially recanted to save his life. Then, at the last moment, he renounced his recantation and thrust the hand that had signed the recantation into the flames first, saying, "This unworthy right hand." Many Protestants fled England during Mary's reign. Approximately 800 English Protestants went into exile. Most went to cities in Germany and Switzerland where Protestant reformers had established themselves: Geneva, Zurich, Strasbourg, Frankfurt, Basel. These exiles were mostly clergy, educated men, university graduates. They were not peasants. They were the intellectual elite of English Protestantism. And in these continental cities they encountered a form of Protestantism more radical than anything they had known in England. They met John Calvin in Geneva. They studied with Heinrich Bullinger in Zurich. They absorbed Reformed theology, predestination, the sovereignty of God, the total depravity of man, the authority of Scripture alone, and they saw how churches could be organized, not with bishops appointed by the crown, but with elders elected by congregations, Presbyterian church government. In 1558, Mary died. She was 42 years old. She had failed to produce an heir, and her half-sister Elizabeth became queen. Elizabeth was 25. She was Protestant but cautious. She had survived Mary's reign by keeping her head down, by attending Catholic Mass, by not making enemies. She was a political survivor, and she had no intention of allowing religious extremism to destabilize her kingdom. Elizabeth wanted a religious settlement that would satisfy as many people as possible, something between Catholicism and radical Protestantism, a middle way, via media. In 1559, Parliament passed 2 acts that defined the Elizabethan religious settlement. The Act of Supremacy made Elizabeth Supreme Governor of the Church of England. Not
God
Supreme
damn it.
Head, because that seemed too Catholic, but Supreme Governor, giving her ultimate authority. The Act of Uniformity required all clergy to use the Book of Common Prayer and all subjects to attend Church of England services. The settlement was Protestant in theology, but retained some Catholic practices. Bishops, vestments, kneeling during communion, a formal liturgy. To convince Protestants, this was compromise. This was worldliness. This was putting politics ahead of truth. But Elizabeth would not budge. This was her settlement. Take it or leave it. The exiles returned to England in 1559. 800 men who had spent 5 years studying Reformed theology, who had seen Geneva's model of godly discipline, who believed England needed to complete the Reformation. They came home expecting Elizabeth to give them freedom to reform the church thoroughly. They were disappointed. The first conflict came almost immediately, the vestments controversy. In 1565, Archbishop Matthew Parker issued the advertisements, a set of rules requiring clergy to wear specific vestments during church services. A surplice, a white robe worn with a cassock. To the returning exiles, this was intolerable. Catholics wore surplices. This was popish. This was idolatry. This was putting ceremonial triviality ahead of gospel truth. Approximately 37 ministers refused to wear the required vestments. They were suspended from their positions. Some left the Church of England entirely. In 1569, a group of ministers in London began holding their own worship services without episcopal authorization. No surplices, no bishops, just scripture, prayer, and preaching. This was the beginning of Puritan separatism, the recognition that the Church of England as constituted under Elizabeth could not be reformed from within. It had to be abandoned. But most Puritans did not separate in the 1560s. They stayed in the Church of England. They tried to work for reform through legal channels. They petitioned. They wrote pamphlets. They lobbied Parliament. They hoped that eventually, or Elizabeth would see reason, that she would allow further reformation, that England would become a truly reformed nation like Geneva or Zurich. The leaders of this movement were men whose names would define early Puritanism. Thomas Cartwright was a professor at Cambridge University.
You goddamn
In 1570, he gave a series of lectures on the Book of Acts, arguing that the New Testament mandated Presbyterian church government, that bishops were unbiblical, that the church should be governed by elders. His lectures caused a sensation. Students flocked to hear him, but university authorities were horrified. Cartwright was removed from his professorship. He fled to Geneva. John Field was another leader. He was a London minister who organised what became known as the Classical Movement, an underground network of Puritan clergy who met secretly to discuss theology and church reform. These meetings were illegal. The conventicle laws forbade religious gatherings outside the established church. But Field and his allies met anyway. They corresponded. They supported each other. They prepared for the day when reform would be possible. Walter Travers wrote one of the most important early Puritan books, a full and plain declaration of ecclesiastical discipline. He argued that the Bible prescribed a specific form of church government, that this government was Presbyterian, and that any deviation from this scriptural pattern was sin. This was a radical claim. Not just that Presbyterian government was better, but that it was commanded by God, that bishops were not just unnecessary but evil. Elizabeth's government cracked down. In the 1580s, a series of pamphlets appeared under the pseudonym Martin Marprelate. These pamphlets were satirical attacks on the bishops. They mocked Archbishop John Whitgift. They ridiculed the claims of episcopal authority. They were funny, biting, and effective. The government went on a hunt for the authors. Printing presses were seized. Several men were arrested, some were executed, not for the content of the pamphlets, but for seditious libel, for undermining the Queen's authority. The Marprelate controversy destroyed the classical movement. The underground network was exposed. John Field died in 1588. Thomas Cartwright was imprisoned. The hope of reforming the Church of England through organised pressure evaporated. By the 1590s, it was clear that Elizabeth would not bend. Either the Puritan movement in England faced a choice: conform, separate, or wait. Most Puritans conformed. They stayed in the Church of England. They wore the surplice even though they hated it. They used the Book of Common Prayer even though they thought it was inadequate. They submitted to bishops even though they believed episcopal government was unbiblical. And they justified this compromise by arguing that the Church of England, for all its flaws, was still a true church. Imperfect, yes. In need of reform, absolutely. But not a false church. Not Rome. Not Babylon. A church that could be worked with,
fucking goddamn Christ.
Gradually reformed over time. But some Puritans could not compromise. Robert Brown was one. In 1581 he published a book called A Treatise of Reformation Without Tarrying for Any. The title says it all. Reform now. Don't wait for the Queen.
Suck my dick,
Don't
bitch.
wait for Parliament. Don't wait for the bishops.
Suck
Separate
my
from
fucking
the
dick.
corrupt national church and form gathered congregations of true believers. Brown's followers, called Brownists, were hunted by the authorities. Some were imprisoned, some were executed. Brown himself eventually recanted and rejoined the Church of England, but his ideas survived. Henry Barrow and John Greenwood were two Puritan ministers who took Brown's ideas further. They argued that the Church of England was